everybody, and welcome to another session with us at Aucademy. Quite exciting today because I've got Aucademy people who are typically behind the scenes on screen with me, which is lovely, and also friends, which is nice. I have friends, don't I? I am Dr. Chloe Farahar. I am a white person with a safe head, giant glasses, and I'm wearing one of our Aucademy sweatshirts, which is navy blue. And I'm joined today by Ben, Libby, and Sai, and we are discussing situational mutism. So something that I don't actually experience. So I experience aphasia or loss of speech when I'm really, really burnt out. But that's not the same as situational mutism, which is often incorrectly referred to as selective mutism. And we're going to show a little cartoon as well today that we've put together to depict what situational mutism is and how Ben and Libby have described it for us. And I'm going to ask if people are comfortable to describe their appearance too, if they feel okay to do that. I'm going to start with Sai. It's always fun to hear Sai's description.
White, middle 30s, slight thinning on the front of my brow, sausage flavoured.
Lovely. Thanks for that, Si.
And a person.
I really would like to know what that actually looks like for people in their minds, if they can actually think in pictures. That'd be quite fun. And Ben, if you wouldn't mind doing a physical description.
White man, lots of hair, unlike Si. No beard, unlike Si. 22.
Unlike Si.
Wearing a Wearing a white jumper. That's pretty much it, isn't it? Wearing a headset.
Fantastic. Oh yeah, and your fantastic headset. And
Also
we're just
wearing a
hoping.
t-shirt with "I just really like Mayo." Okay.
When did you get that? Was that recently?
A month or so ago.
Okay. And Ben's just hoping as well that his amazing Marvel shield in the background stays up because he put it up today, and he's worried it's going to fall off. So that'll be interesting if that happens. And Libby, if you wouldn't mind doing a physical description.
I'm a white person with kind of medium long dark hair and dark eyes with a multicoloured octopus.
Oh yes, multicoloured octopus.
And I am actually wearing an Aucademy t-shirt as well.
What one did you get, Libby?
It's just the normal t-shirt.
Oh yes, nice. Got to love a little bit of merch. What would you call it? Like promoting? There's going to be some silliness, I think, as well, just so everyone's aware, because Ben and Sai have this like long-going bromance and sense of humour thing that goes on behind the scenes, which keeps us in stitches in our very small autistic friendship group. So
we
we're
also
going to start.
have an appearance from the moustache cat.
Is the mustachioed cat there?
The squeaky moustache cat.
No, she's gone upstairs. So.
They might come back. They might come back. So that was Libby's cat, which is adorable. They've got a little white moustache. It's just fantastic. Somebody's just asked, is the merch shipped from the US? Currently it is, yes. We are going to look into a more European shop as well, so that we've got two sites that might make it a bit more affordable, if you're in Europe, because coming from the US it was a bit more for the shipping and things. I still don't think it was that expensive, actually, compared to just buying hoodies and sweatshirts anyway. I think that person is in the States.
I think weirdly, the more you buy, the more expensive the shipping is.
Probably the weight.
Yeah.
As in how much it weighs, not waiting for it. So as we like to do for particularly new guests, we like to ask, who are you and what is or are your dedicated interests? So I'm going to ask Ben. So who are you and what is or are your dedicated interests?
Well, I'm Ben. I'm a sexy potato, obviously. I think it's pretty obvious what my interests are if you can see the background of my screen, which is Marvel. And I love gaming. I think Marvel and gaming are my main two things.
Marvel and gaming, fantastic. And for people who might not be able to see, so Ben's got lots of those, what are they called? Funko Pops? Is that right? Funko Pops, all of like Marvel characters. Are there any that aren't Marvel characters?
I've got one Star Wars one, that's it.
Just one?
Yeah.
Just
it wasn't one I bought, so I had no choice.
Is it Stormtrooper?
No, I think it's Mandalorian.
Oh, okay.
It's because size, well, we can talk about size interest in a minute as well, because you've got all your, yours is Star Trek, isn't it, on the wall?
I'd say primarily Star Trek, but also a Marvel. Anyways, in a minute.
And Libby, obviously we know you're Libby, but who are you? So what are you doing at the moment? Because you're a student, aren't you? And what are your dedicated interests? Because I know you've got quite a few.
Yeah, I find it hard to limit that question. I like most things. There's not much I don't like. So I'm not sure about that one.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm a student in my last year, history and philosophy.
Lovely. History and philosophy, nice stuff. And Sai, who are you? This is going to be interesting. Just for people who maybe are not too aware, they must know who Northern Naughty is by now. But Northern Naughty, you do have the PDA profile, so you do like to answer in your particular way.
Yeah, I'm
so
George.
when I ask, Who are you and what are your dedicated interests?
Dedicated interests are trousers and the different kinds of zipping function that they have. But mostly also Star Trek and Marvel and Star Wars. I do have a few Star Trek models. Can't remember how many I wanted. About 40 or 50. I would have a lot more if I had the room and the money. And I'd also have Funko Pops and I'd have all the things. I also got a bit of a interest in tattoos as well. I don't know if it's just because it's a visual stim for me, but I would be covered in tattoos if I could actually make my mind up, because they have to be unique and one-offs for me. I can't just pick something out of a book.
You've got a couple of tattoos, haven't you, Si?
6, I think.
6?
Well, they were started off as 6 individual ones, but that was one originally around my wrist, but it was also on my forearm, and it goes up onto my arm and over my shoulder. And I've got another one on the camera, forearm there. Come on, camera, sort it out. And one on the other leg, and one on my back. I'm sure I'm missing one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6.
Because I actually remember, so people probably won't know this, but at one point, I still am, but I work with the University of Kent Wellbeing and Autistic team. And that's how I met Libby and Ben initially, because they went through our Autistic Discovery programme and came to our University of Kent Autistic groups. So I do actually remember Ben coming in, talking about, and then coming in and showing us your tattoo. You've got 1 or 2 now?
3.
I can't remember, it's 3. Okay. Are there any of them observable without?
I've got I can't twist it. The arrow.
Lovely.
Semicolon.
Ah, nice.
And then
Yes.
you can't see it, but the end game Iron Man snap toe or the infinity gauntlet.
Which one was the one you got first then? Because I remember you showing us the Marvel one. Was it the
Arrow,
the
then
arrow?
the semicolon, and then the Marvel one. So I must have got that. I think I got it all in 1 year. Yeah, 2019,
Nice.
I think.
And
Also got
Libby,
2,
you don't have any tattoos.
He's also got 2 B's on his buttocks, so it spells Bob.
Sorry, viewers, but yeah, that's Si's sense of humour, potentially Ben's sense of humour as well. So, and actually, people, I don't know if people do know this, but I do actually have 2 tattoos as well. One I got when I was quite young, which is a rose on my back, which actually now I'd quite like to have redone, because I had that done when I was 17. And I had thought very long, a whole year, about what I wanted at 16. But actually I would get something else now. But the one that's on my arm is I got done after my gramps passed away, and it's quite nautical. But I did design it myself, and I'm terrible at drawing, so I actually had a tattoo artist then take my drawing and make it into something that wouldn't be my terrible drawing on my arm.
I've seen your drawings, they're good.
You didn't see the tattoo drawings that I was making though, although I was using like graph paper so that I could try and make it really neat. But okay, actually that's another one of so your maybe not dedicated interest, but you're quite crafty. You've made me a bronze snail, which I love.
Copper.
Oh, is it copper? Sorry, copper snail. But it's it's a lovely little piece of art, and I think you'd do really well if you could make those for a living.
Yeah, I do like making things, especially out of reclaimed materials.
Victoria is also one of the Aucademy sort of team members and knows us, and so they just said, "And a tattoo of Psy by any chance, Ben? Would you think of getting a tattoo of Psy, maybe?"
There's
no,
already
no
one of
comment.
me.
No comment.
He's got a tattoo of me looking up on his inner thigh.
Psy. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to ask each of you in turn, when did you discover you were autistic? So if we start the other direction. So if I start with Sai, who, for people who can't see, also has headphones on, and also Octavia, which is his little octopus on his head. Trying to make out like you have hair, Sai. So when did you discover you were autistic, Sai?
2017.
Discovered, or were you diagnosed at that point, or that's when you started looking into it?
Well, I watched a program by a well-known naturist, not the ones that get naked like me and Ben, the ones that like animals and nature and stuff.
Okay, one of those, yeah.
But it was Asperger's and me. So yeah, I didn't really know anything about being autistic or anything at that point. I had I've met children that were autistic, but beyond that, I didn't really know anything. So yeah, I watched that program in 2017, and then I kind of realised, yeah, that's me. And it kind of got me thinking about things, and then I spent another sort of year looking into it, joining Facebook groups. A lot of them I got kicked out of. I'm still working on that. I'm still doing well getting kicked out of Facebook groups. Then I went to my doctor with a load of, those tests you do online. Took a load of them to him. He said he'd do a referral for me. I kept going back like every 2 weeks and asking, have you done my referral? And he was always no. So I kept pestering him. About a year later, I was told I was going to have my assessment. So the whole process took about 18 months from me going to a doctor to actually getting an assessment. And then that took like another 4 months because it started in December, the first assessment. And then I had a second assessment in March, I think. And I did the frog book like you. It's really very confusing.
For anyone who's not sure what Sai's talking about there, it's in some of the it's probably part of the ADOS, which is an assessment that is typically used with children, and it is not really suitable for later discovered autistic people, really. And we do this frog book, and I still don't know why. I still don't know what it tells us.
It's a really interesting book, but she asked me to read it and make a story from it, which I don't do. I'm not very good at making stories from books and things. There's no words or anything. So I just have to...
You are very, because your fuller profile, how would you describe your fuller profile? So you're autistic?
Autistic, PDA, dyslexic, dyspraxic, ADHD. Is that it?
So again, you're a very exciting cake made of different ingredients. And the reason I ask is because, yes, you have quite an interesting and kind of impulsive imagination, which can be really fun, because when we were having a conversation with our lovely Victoria, and we were talking about people that were actually very frustrating for us, I say some neurotypical professionals. And I still have it in my mind because I'm very visual of your description, which is, who are we? What was it? Attaching to a bungee cord and chucking into a volcano?
Yeah, we were doing that to someone. I blame you. It was all your idea. Attaching someone. I think in my head they were attached by the hairs of their head as well, so that they went in feet first, bungeeing in and out. But of course, as they were disintegrating up their legs, you'd have to lower the bungee a little bit with some fireworks stuffed in there. Well, I was going to say in their pants, but it was actually up their ass.
Oh dear. And Jenny says that they've done the frog book twice, NHS and then a private assessment. Nobody still tells us what that frog book is. So yeah, yeet into a volcano. Apparently, totally Chloe's idea. Okay. And then, so when exactly was that assessment? So you said it was like 18 months or so from start to finish. So were you diagnosed 2018?
Diagnosed March 2019.
2019, yeah, because I was thinking it was 2019 I met you because you came to our University
The
Autistic Pride.
yeah. I think that was June, wasn't it?
Yeah, or late June, July, somewhere over that period, summer period, I think, yeah.
And then I started coming to the in-person socials because I'm a young student.
Very young.
Yes.
So I was nearly, I keep joking about this, but you're only a few months off now from being the answer to the universe and everything, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's when I actually really started to learn about being autistic, when I started hanging around you a lot.
Us lot, yeah. Which was great.
And well, not just being autistic, but like the disability community as well, because before that I'd never considered myself as disabled. But, obviously I know different now. And even over the past couple of years, I've become more disabled because of being diagnosed with POTS, which has got, because I had COVID, and so my POTS got very bad.
I don't know how to end that bit. I know. Well, it was when did you discover you were autistic? And I just wanted to know like your fuller profile, because that's always helpful 2017. To know. Yeah, lovely. And it's helpful to know. I like hearing about, like, say, what kind of cake or pastry a person is, like what ingredients makes them them.
Rocky Road.
So, Rocky Road.
Definitely a rocky road.
So Libby, I know this is part in the video as well, but I don't know if you've got anything to add as well about when you discovered you were autistic.
Or add on to what the video already says.
Or just you can just tell me in your own words, because I know it's in the video as well.
Okay. It's roughly when I was 16. So still in school. Sorry, a cat just opened the door. And it was mainly through looking at actually autistic stuff like blogs and things.
And because I met you, like I say, through, I think you came to the social first, and then you went through the Autistic Discovery Journey program with us. It was called SYA back then, so you're autistic. And yeah, because I think when we get onto this discussion anyway, I always remember both you and Ben being quiet, but hopefully we made you feel that you could be there in that space without having to talk, and nobody was going to press you. And one of the first things I remember about you, actually, Libby, is you were wearing, if that's all right to describe, you like pressure, don't you? So you were wearing a wrist brace.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, "Oh, what have you done?" kind of thing. And you said quite quietly, you was like, "Oh, I just like the pressure, like that was going to be a really weird thing." And I was like, "Oh, yes, that makes sense." And then I don't know if it was the following week or a few weeks later, I'd gone into Tiger, and they had a lovely animals that had like the snap bands, and I brought a few of those, and I was like, oh, and I brought it in because I thought there's another way that you can get that pressure, that feel that you might get from something.
The rings now.
Oh yes, so Libby's just showing us one of the, these are quite useful if you do like pressure. So it is called an acupressure ring, and you can get quite a lot of them quite cheap on Amazon, and they're really, really good for that pressure for people who really need that. Oh, Bobby's just asking, are we still doing So You're Autistic? Yes, we've been updating it, Bobby. So we're hoping to do some private runs of it this year. We've been saying that for several years though. But we've rebranded it, if you like, as Autistic Discovery Journey, because I felt like So You're Autistic ? Was a little bit combative. And where we've been using it with younger people, some 14-year-olds, I just thought, actually, it sounds more affirming to say Autistic Discovery Journey program. So I kind of updated it. And Ben, when did you discover you were autistic?
I think oddly enough, 2017 as well. So I went to school counselling in secondary school, mostly to avoid games and PE, but it helped in the long run, I think, because they referred me to CAMS, and then that was just a few years of shit. I'm allowed to swear on it.
Yes.
That's a few years of shit.
No fucking swearing.
So that led to more just tests, I think, and was it CBT, I think it's called. And then they just thought, okay, just do a diagnosis assessment. And then I did the storybook. I'm not sure if it's the frog book that everyone else did, but I definitely did storybook. And then in late 2017, just before I turned 18, I was diagnosed, and I think they wanted to rush the diagnosis because you have to leave CAMS at 18, I think. So yeah, that's pretty much when.
I'm thinking, yeah, when we met you at the university, you were diagnosed already, weren't you? When you got to university. Whereas Libby, so you recognised or discovered you were autistic when you were 16, you said? Right?
Yeah, 16.
But you only got diagnosed last year?
I think it was during lockdown, so it kind of all blurs to me.
It all blurs, yeah.
I think it was last year.
Yeah, time means nothing anymore, I know. Yes, so which is quite interesting, getting recognised still relatively later. Do you feel that, so actually before we get on to the video, I've added a question, which is, do you feel you were always situationally mute or experiencing situational mutism? So from quite a young age, do you feel that you were both relatively quiet in terms of mouth words anyway, from quite a young age? Ben's nodding, yeah. Yeah. So then it makes me wonder again why you got missed until you were later discovered yourselves actually. Have you got any ideas about that? I don't know if you do, but any ideas why weren't you recognised younger?
Because that's, I think, I'm not sure if it's stereotypical, but the whole he's quiet but gets on with his work, that right. Cliche thing where every teacher would say that, so no one looks into it or no one thinks twice. If he just does what he's told, they don't really care. So you go under the radar. I think I've always been quiet and I hate talking, and I couldn't talk sometimes because I get told off quite a lot for it. But it's only clocked in the last year or so when I've been like with around you lot what it actually is. So it's helpful to know.
And I'm going to come to Libby with that question as well in a second, but I'm just thinking if it's all right to ask both of you, because we chat nearly every day, actually. So there's a little group of us as autistic people that kind of connect most days. And it is very, very rare that, for instance, Ben, I will hear you using mouth words. I think I've known you since probably 2018. 2018, do you think? 2019, maybe?
Yeah, 2018, I think.
2018. And
yeah,
Libby?
late 2018.
Libby, when have I known you since, do you think? About 2018, 2019?
I came to uni 2019.
Yeah, so 2019. So I think I've probably heard Ben use mouth words. Literally, I could probably count it on my hands. So I actually want to ask, why did you wanted to try, which is different to say, because if you couldn't, but you wanted to try and use mouth words today, which wasn't necessarily expected at all from us, because as a little group, we are so used to, and just, you know, don't think anything of, just bringing you in from the chat box. So why do you have a reason why you were hoping to use mouth words today? Because we never would expect or pressure you to.
I think a part of me just wanted to, is because I feel safer around people here. Plus, it's something I care about, and part of it is masking the talking. I know I don't have to, but there's still a part of me that wants to. And well, for a lot of people, this is probably the first time they've heard you ever. And I'm assuming some people might watch something for situationally, or no, you're not situational, are you, Chloe? No.
Me, no.
People assume that since we're here and we're talking about situational mutism, that we have to use the chat box or something, or we have to stand out in that way. But some of us can speak and do speak a lot, just in different ways, or when we feel able to. And I think I feel able to today, and it makes me more willing to speak.
So there's a few things that I think that is quite useful for people to understand as well, which is that I think we've talked about this, and certainly when we were putting the video together, so the Toonly that we're going to show, is that it takes a lot of energy and effort to use mouth words. So sometimes it's not necessarily the case that you're experiencing situational mutism, which we will get into in the Toonly, which is this experience of anxiety at speaking with other people or around other people. So that can have that physical effect of making you feel like you can't talk, which, like I say, we're going to go through in the Toonly. But then other times you might not actually be experiencing situational mutism per se, but it's taking a lot of energy to actually use mouth words, where it may be you can express yourself quite quickly with not as much energy in the chat box if you need to or want to. And I think, so what you just said as well, Ben, is really important, because you said two things, and one was relatively positive and one was relatively negative. I say relative because it's always relative, that you feel relatively comfortable because you know us. Like I say, we actually do chat most days, and usually in a Zoom. So we see each other quite often. So you feel, hopefully, which is lovely.
Invalidation was a big trigger for my situational mutism when I was younger, because I remember as a child being quite chatty, and then I started getting into my teens and was invalidated a lot. Even things like people in my own town asking me where I was from because I had a different accent to them, even though I'd grown up in that town my entire life. Yeah, constant validation, and over the years I slowly got quieter and quieter until I am more talkative now, because I kind of don't care anymore, but I do get into situations where if I don't know people, then I will shut down. Or if I'm in a situation where I'm stressed, then I will just shut down.
And I think, and like I say, so we will cover this as well. I might just describe some of the things now, because like I say, the video does some of the detail, but not necessarily everything. Because there are different reasons for people not, as autistic people, to not use mouth words. And some of it might be situational mutism, so anxiety, and it kind of shuts down the ability to speak. It might be that it's exhausting. So Charlotte agreed as well that mouth words definitely take more energy for us. And like I say, sometimes I lose the ability to speak or not be able to speak well. Like I lose the ability to get the words from here to here when I'm extremely burnt out and I've done too much. So there's lots, I think, of different reasons why autistic people might not use mouth words, and situational mutism is one of them. And because somebody said, I have struggles where people expected me to say something, but I didn't. But they also didn't explain what it was they expected prior to expecting it. Okay. So I wondered if this is mutism or not. I don't think so, maybe. So that's more, like you say, and people not being clear. And so you didn't speak, which is not quite the same. So like I say, situational mutism is much more, from what I've understood from Ben and Libby, a very physical difficulty in speaking with or around other people, that particularly if you're not comfortable.
I feel the pressure to speak triggering as well. Like if I'm on the phone or someone is asking something of me, a question, I'm having to process that, because we know from Rachel Cullen's work that we work on a pragmatic level. So we work on each word. So if someone's asking me questions, that whole sentence I'm having to think about, and then I'm also thinking about, are they going to understand me? And they're waiting for an answer, and then I just end up shutting down. It's like, there's no point talking. So, and I know that before I'm going to speak to someone. So I've got all these scenarios in my head where there's no point talking because it's not going to go well.
There's people like me, and I talk a lot. I do talk a lot. Like I say, it is rare that I don't talk. That usually means I'm struggling or I'm in shutdown. And actually, when I used to work for a big pharmaceutical and beauty chain, so I always joke, laugh when I say that, but a big chain of stores. People around me.
And Summers, by the way.
No, God. People I worked with, particularly when I'd worked with them for quite a long time, they would start to recognise, oh, Chloe's gone quiet. Are you all right? Because that's not typical for me. So that's usually a good indicator for other people. So I want to now ask Libby, because I went off on a tangent as well. So you nodded and said that, yes, you were experiencing situational mutism, or at least quiet as well when you were younger, so not using mouth words. So same question to you. So why was it that you were missed? Why weren't you discovered autistic when you were younger?
I think it's a combination of like the stuff Ben said, quite similar in that area. But also, it's a long story, which I won't really go into, but because of other stuff, family things and so forth, it was put down to, everything was just put down to like maybe PTSD or something along those lines. Even when I got a bit older and started saying, I don't think that's where my anxiety is like coming from, kind of thing. It was dismissed for a long time. They were very determined to pin it on certain things. So that was quite a battle for quite a long time in that area as well.
And that must be very frustrating, because to be autistic isn't one particular thing. So it's like, why weren't they also trying to find out about your sensory profile? What are you hyper and hyposensitive to? So like I say, one of the first things I noticed about Libby was that they were wearing that wrist brace, and then you were saying you liked the pressure, and I'm like, right, that makes sense, you know. So I say obviously, but it's potentially you've got maybe proprioception differences that means that you need that pressure. So maybe like weighted blankets, things like that. So it's kind of like they focused maybe too much for both of you. You're quiet, but getting on with it. And it's like, but what about their sensory profile? What about their communication profile? And when I say that, I don't mean the use of mouth words. Don't know why Si's disappeared. But yeah, I don't mean necessarily the use of mouth words, but how you understand communication, how you communicate in whatever way that might be. Actually, for both of you, when you were younger, and you had periods where you didn't use mouth words, did you have other modes of communication, or were you maybe pressured to use mouth words more? If I ask Ben first, because otherwise I'm just asking outright.
I'd say pressured. I'd say I can't think or remember anything. Like, nowadays you have kids or teenagers, adults with all different options of like the letterboard and the speaking spells and stuff. I don't use any of those. I think I was more insecure or self-conscious about using those things. So I was either left with don't speak and get judged, or just be forced to speak. Those was what it came down to, I think.
And that must be quite difficult as well, because as you just said, you didn't want to use alternate means of communication to highlight that difference, I guess, in communication, because it's more anxiety around being judged, or
Yeah, I'd say a lot of anxiety comes from me being like highlighted to people, me being like seen and standing out. I like to kind of just blend in and not appear odd, even though I know I am odd and I'm happy about being odd, but I don't really want to appear out there in like public. So I don't have many options, and yeah, it drains. It's very draining.
Yeah. And Si says exposure anxiety. Si's just disappearing because he's having something to eat. So that potential for exposure anxiety, that makes sense as well. And can I mention about the potato? Yeah. So like I say, when we do, sometimes I just open a Zoom in the day, and a small number of people, I'll just say if anyone wants to come into the Zoom and just hang out kind of thing while I'm working. Actually makes me feel quite motivated if there's somebody else there. It's called body doubling, isn't it? And we started using Snap Camera, which allows for different filters. And Ben really, really liked the potato filter. And you did say that you wish you could have that potato filter in real life, because it again, you feel like is it like a shield?
Well, it's all that the issue of what I just said about being seen and stuff, that's taken away with the filter. You only see my eyes and my mouth, so everything's hidden, and I can just, wiggle and not be seen as me wiggling, but potato wiggling. It's something different, basically.
Yeah, and it is amazing. It's so fun and funny, and we just got so used to Ben being a potato, and yeah, like you say, wiggling, and just the expressions you do are so cheeky with the camera and the potato. It's just fantastic. It's very fun. I've lost my train of thought now because I wanted to ask a similar question. So my question originally was, how did you communicate, Libby? So did you feel pressure to use mouth words? Were you given other options? Did you just come up with other ways of communicating when you were younger?
I mainly felt pressured, especially at like school. At home, I just wouldn't speak, and that just kind of became an accepted thing at home, but there wasn't any like attempts at like an alternative way or anything. School was quite difficult in that respect, because there was no alternatives, but at the same time the whole idea of you had to participate, there was presentations, all those kind of things were quite difficult.
And this is Tez, I think, Teslin, says when no one else is using alternative communication, it's not comfortable. So I do wonder so Ben was saying that actually you wouldn't want to use, or when you were younger, maybe you wouldn't have wanted to use alternate means of communication, because again, it's putting the spotlight on you, which is really uncomfortable. Do you feel like both of you actually, if other people in your class, for instance, were using other means of communicating, would that have made a difference? It might not have.
I would say during like lockdown, when like university was all online, so many people just using the chat box during lectures. I know it was a bit of issue of people not like turning their cameras on and stuff, but I could just use the chat box and it was just like everyone else. And last year was my best year of the participation part, because I could just easily ask questions and stuff in the chat box like everyone else was. So,
and I want to come back to that in a bit as well, which is about things like university and learning, or just education, or just being in different settings like that, and learning. Because what you just said is that's a very frustrating thing that some university courses, depends what degrees you're doing and what disciplines, have so much focus on this idea of participation, because their idea of participation is a very particular idea. It's the use of mouth words, right? And everyone knows with us, with Aucademy, whenever we do training or wherever we've got groups, whatever it is, if you are in the room, you are participating. So our social groups, a number of people in the chat box will be aware, our socials for Aucademy, if you are there, you are participating. To us, that is participation. So there's no onus on camera, microphone, or even chat box, kind of thing. So it's really frustrating that the universities can have that focus on a particular mode of participation, because you probably attended most of your lectures and seminars. Is that fair to say?
That's the other thing. And I've heard other people say at a group as well about the last year being online, people had like the highest attendance as well. And I can see why, because I get so much easily more burnt out going in person to seminars and like being on campus rather than doing it online. So yeah, I could definitely see that as well.
What about you, Ben? So you actually finished your degree before it went online. Is that?
My last year was online, and I think I did enjoy my first year in person because of the experience and everything. But once you've experienced that already, going through all the in-person stuff is a lot harder. And although I agree with Libby that the COVID online lessons were easier in the sense that you could use chat box and have your camera off, I still think there's a long way to go. Because I had one of my modules I had an online presentation to do, and whilst the independent learning plan allowed me to get out of it and just do it in another format without speaking, I could just do it like a visual presentation instead of in front of the class. The comments and the feedback afterwards were, you should speak, and there's no audio, there's nothing. So even when there's adjustments made, you're still getting judged for trying to do it in another format. So there's no really like win-win.
And that's, again, I think sometimes, which shouldn't be the case, that again falls down to the particular discipline or even the particular lecturer or academic or teaching GTA, so graduate teaching assistant. Because when we actually, so in psychology, for instance, and I made a lot of pushback against this thing of marking people against them doing the presentations, because when you get to get a BPS, so a British Psychological Society recognised psychological degree, that degree has to do certain things, and you have to fulfil certain things for it to be BPS accredited. One of the bits, and it's literally like one sentence, is the student has to have experience of presenting. And for some reason, everyone has gone with that means that we mark them based on their presentation, but that's not what that sentence says. So people have interpreted that sentence how they wanted to, because I said, well, actually, it just says that they need to have the experience of presenting. So actually, why don't you mark them based on them writing a short piece on how they experienced presenting, for instance, and then also offering multiple ways that people could present. I'd actually really like more interesting things for people to do if they want to. If they want to make a cartoon, if they want to do a pre-record or whatever it might be. Because I think, Libby, you did a pre-record.
The schools make a thing about that, having to present in front of the class. Because whenever I had to do that, I would just not go in. And because of the anxiety of that, it wouldn't just be one day for that actual day that they're doing the presentation. I'd be off the day or two before and the day or two after, if maybe the whole week. And of course, I'd get in a lot of trouble from the school and my parents. But there was no way I was going to be standing up in front of a class and speaking. Absolutely no chance. That was never given another option. Well, I was never even personally asked or anything. It's just everyone's doing this.
And yeah, just not taking into account that we're all very different. I mean, me personally, I like presenting. People know this. People know I love a PowerPoint and standing up and waffling about the PowerPoint. But not everybody does. And I still get anxious doing it. It's like an excitement and it's anxiety as well. But for some people, that overrides the ability to talk to a presentation. So Libby, you were given the option, weren't you, to do a pre-record, I think, for one of your presentations at the university?
Yeah, I did. It was after there was a practice presentation and that destroyed me. So the next one, I talked to my seminar leader about it, and he gave me options to do like a blog or something, but I wanted to try pre-recording just to see how I would feel about it, kind of experimental in a way. And it was so much better than trying to force myself to do it in person. So I quite like it. It was much better method. And
the pushback I've had from people, other academics, for instance, actually my psychology department's pretty good, but pushback I've had would be things like, well, then everyone will do a pre-record, or everyone, and it's like, one, that's okay. That's okay. If everyone does a pre-record, that's okay. And two, no, they won't, because it takes much more effort and time to put together a pre-record than the student that will just wing it and do it on the day. Kind of, just turns up and talks to a PowerPoint or whatever it might be. So
why is a presentation only classed as using mouth words?
Yeah.
Because a presentation, where does that say exclusively mouth words?
Again, it's things unsaid, the unsaid written rules that we don't get, we're not privy to. We don't get that manual when we're younger. Okay, so because we've actually already gone for an hour, which is great. Well, just under an hour, because I forget we go about 5 past, don't we? So I think I'm going to play the video. So we will be off screen for this little bit. The video is about 7 minutes long, and we put this together for a number of reasons. We might re-record it in terms of the audio, because people are too used to my voice. And I think it would be nice, Libby, if people just really don't think it's me. I don't want people to misunderstand that we are voicing those words for you. And so we put together this short video on what is situational mutism, because we were asked by a string of schools. And
people are fainting because of my sexy voice.
No, I'd like a
The combination of my sexy voice
I don't like being
Ben's sexy image.
Ben, so basically I do the audio for Libby. So basically Ben and Libby worked on the scripts and they put together the information that went into the video, and then Si and I just recorded the scripts that we were given by Ben and Libby. And so, yeah, Ben, who is, how old are you? 22? 22, and you're from the Southeast, right? Born and bred and grown up in the Southeast. 22-year-old from the Southeast has like a 41-year-old Northern accent in the video, which is, I actually quite love. But Ben, you think we could redo it? I still think maybe we could get Spencer from Social and maybe Kelly from Social. I think both their voices would be quite nice to do. Okay, so without further ado. Hello and welcome to our presentation. I'm Libby.
And I'm Ben. Today we'll be talking about situational mutism.
There are two main perspectives on situational mutism, the social model and the medical model. The medical model, as defined by the NHS, states that it is a severe anxiety disorder where a person is unable to speak in certain social situations, including giving presentations like this one, which is why we have people voicing our words for us. The NHS also states that what they call selective mutism starts in childhood, when children are around 2 to 4 years of age. The cause of this mutism is said to be unknown, and it is regarded as a phobia of talking to certain people and is associated with anxiety. The NHS claims that with treatment, someone is able to overcome selective mutism through such methods as speech therapy, cognitive behavioural therapy, or anxiety management.
The social model, however, is a different perspective. It is better known as situational mutism rather than selective, as you do not select or choose when to be mute. It all depends on the situation, such as the person you are talking to, the environment you are in, and what the scenario is. It is also better seen as a neurodivergence rather than a disorder due to it being a communication difference, not an illness. Situational mutism can also occur at any age, despite the medical model focusing mainly on children.
It's important to remember that just because someone doesn't talk in the traditional way, with mouth words, it doesn't mean they don't still have a voice. They just share their voice in other ways. If a situationally mute person is not offered another way of communicating, then that person's voice is effectively being silenced. Volume does not dictate whether someone has something to say or not, and everyone should have a chance to speak in one way or another.
There are different labels associated with situationally mute people. Typically speaking, people inaccurately refer to situationally mute people as non-verbal. We may be verbal in other ways, such as text or signing. We, for instance, prefer terms like minimally speaking, non-speaking, semi-speaking, or unreliably speaking, just to name a few. It is not necessarily as simple as speaks or doesn't speak.
Note that mutism is not just shyness, it is involuntary. It is not just nerves or being shy, and it is not being rude. Playing down someone's mutism by claiming that they are just shy by saying it's only a phone call or everyone gets nervous presenting is harmful and ignores a person's needs. It is invalidating, and being forced to speak when we can't or when we find it too hard to use mouth words can be traumatising. Now here are our first-hand experiences of situational mutism.
I am often described as minimally speaking to most. I do actually speak a lot, but only to myself and people I want to speak to and when I want to. When I experience situational mutism,
I feel physically unable to speak. Although I can force myself, it will drain all my energy and often leads to a meltdown or shutdown, which is not healthy for me. I mostly communicate by text chat in spaces or situations where I'm not forced to use mouthwords, and I avoid phone calls as much as I can due to the severe anxiety of taking them, as the uncertainty of who's calling, why they are calling, and the anxiety of being asked to repeat myself or speak up on the phone stresses me out. It is infuriating wanting to speak or say something in a conversation or to someone you want to speak to and not being able to get words out, or avoiding the situation altogether because I know I won't be able to get the words out. It can be very debilitating.
For me, it feels like my throat is closing as I try to speak, and I can feel myself physically pushing the words up my throat and out my mouth, like I'm fighting against an invisible force. Forcing me to use mouthwords in presentations, for example, can cause high anxiety to the point my body becomes ill. I've had experiences where I may use mouthwords often with some people, and so they become upset when I become mute, which is out of my control and frustrating for me as well. So people shouldn't take it personally or worrying I'm having a relapse.
So what would help? For me, being given the option to use other forms of communication, such as text chat or email. This significantly relieves my anxiety and stress, which in turn makes me less likely to be withdrawn and mute in those situations in future. It also allows me to open up more and feel comfortable to say things I want to without the added anxiety of how I will say it. It would help to not be told to speak up or moaned at when I don't use mouthwords. This would make me feel less guilty for something I'm not able to control, as you never know how much a thing can play on someone's mind if told off for something they can't control, as Libby previously mentioned.
For me, the main way to reduce anxiety is to reduce the pressure to use mouthwords by having different ways of communicating available and accepted. To remove inaccessible obstacles such as forced class participation would make life so much easier and less stressful.
There are simple ways to help situationally mute people, and that is by being accessible. Offer other means of communication, whether it's text chat, a pen and paper to write or draw with, picture cards or letterboards to point at, text-to-speech software or even sign language. Make the situation as calming as possible. Reducing the sensory overwhelm in the environment will help to ease the nerves of the person and make the situation more comfortable for them. Do not force or try to influence mouthwords at all. Let the person communicate how they wish to, if they even want to communicate, that is. If they are using another form of communication, then read aloud exactly what they verbalized. Please do not paraphrase or shorten what is said, as you would be changing the person's words. People have a right to have what they want to say said aloud, exactly how they want to say it.
Thank you for listening or reading about situational mutism and how we experience it. Just, yep, dancing to the music.
I have no idea how many cuts there are in my bit on that.
How many cuts?
Yeah, it was just lines and lines and lines and lines where I spliced it all together.
I mean, I guess that's quite interesting that I don't know why you ended up doing, I don't know, probably just because we ran out of time and we needed to do it. But considering that sometimes you might struggle to speak, you decided to do the script, or like to read the script for Ben. Oh, people are liking the cartoon as well. We're very pleased, but we do need to re-record because the audio for my part for Libby wasn't particularly good for some reason. So we need to, just get those re-recorded. And then it would be quite nice to just release that little video, the little cartoon on its own, because it's only about 7 minutes long, which I think would be quite nice for people to share. There was something I just wanted to flag as well, that you had at the end of the video within your script, which is that really important thing, which we see actually much more often when we're in meetings and spaces with non-autistic people. And even if the person isn't situationally mute, but for whatever reason they are using the chat box, the issue with people not even paying attention to the fact that the chat box is being used. And if they do decide to bring in what people have said from the chat box, picking and choosing what they want to read, and not reading it verbatim, so exactly as it is written. And I don't have the same experience as both of you at all. So what I've experienced is just a drop in the ocean. But I experienced that in a meeting when I was really struggling to speak, and I was using the chat box, and I got so upset because people were not reading or paying attention to it. I was left till last. So the priority had been put on the people using mouth words in that meeting. And I got really upset. And it just made me think how much more difficult it must be for our situationally mute members of our community, where they're not having their chat box read out. If they are, it's left till last, and then the conversation's moved on, and not reading it exactly how it is written. Any thoughts on that? Have you experienced that, where a chat box is ignored, or your words aren't being said exactly as they're written? So Libby's nodding. Can you talk
recently.
to that? So Libby, what kinds of things have you experienced with that?
Well, I had something the other week, which I thought was funny, when he said it was during the seminar, but he said he couldn't keep checking, so he asked me to call out when I had written something in the chat box. I was like, oh, okay, so that's not going to happen.
Which is the whole point.
Mm.
And a meeting recently, somebody said that they couldn't chair it and read the chat box at the same time. Okay, that's fine. Pick somebody or ask somebody in that meeting to be the person who persons the chat box. Si, you said you've experienced that recently.
Yeah, I attended a Zoom thing. It was for they were getting experiences from autistic people, and it was about it was turned out to be a positive thing after I saw the video about the good, and it was also the bad of being autistic, which I didn't like that side of it. But I wrote quite a few pieces in the text chat, and then because they were speaking to people in order, and then when it came to me, they just kept asking me, Si, are you there? Do you want to speak? Do you want to speak? And Victoria was there as well, and she was like, yeah, the chat, in the text chat, they haven't even looked in the text chat. They were just expecting me to speak.
And that was actually a local autism charity, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So a local autism charity was expecting you to speak and wasn't paying attention to the chat box.
There could have been things in the text chat for a whole lot of reasons. I might have been triggered over something. I might have had some issues that I needed resolving, but they literally hadn't even looked. They didn't even know I would put things in there.
And I think as well, you were quite rightly disappointed that the final edited version of the video, you weren't included. None of your chat box had been included in the actual video. It was just the people who were using mouth words.
Yeah, I was disappointed that, because she did read out what I'd put in the text chat, so she could have used her voice.
Yeah. Oh, and thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, so we do, even if we put things on the screen, we do try to read it as well. So Charlotte says here, you guys at Aucademy are always great at reading out stuff from the chat box. Although I think that might be because does Charlotte go to the socials? So it might be because Charlotte goes to the socials. So we do try in the socials to bring those voices in. And actually, Ben, you've had people said that the occasions where you were maybe the sole facilitator of the social, facilitating purely via the chat box, and it was really good. it was a really good social, because you are funny, you're a very funny person, and I just think if people don't give you the option, I don't know why that face, but if people don't give you the option to use the chat box, or just accept that you will be using the chat box, for instance, they're going to miss out on a really great sense of humour, right? If they don't do the same for Libby, they're going to miss out on a really kind and interesting person. And so, yeah, I think a number of people are saying in here as well about, so here we've got Karen say, awesome name, that we need a chat box reader in every meeting as part of housekeeping of that meeting. This is online etiquette, which is part of every curriculum. Is that part of every curriculum? That's great if that's the case, Karen. Whereabouts in the world are you if that's happening? Because that would be fantastic. We are pushing for this quite a lot, because it means people get included who haven't been able to have a voice in lots of settings. So let's have a quick look. Oh, Garth. I've been joining via YouTube, but I see the Facebook Live is where all the fun is. Yeah, I mean, it is nice because there's a little bit more of a community setting, I guess, on Facebook. Although I've told nobody under the age of 30 uses Facebook very much anymore, which makes me feel very old. There's a few things that in the chat that we pinned that was quite nice. So this from Tez. I don't know if it's Tess Lynn or if I just say Tess, so let me know. So very liberating to hear other people mention that speaking with mouth words shouldn't be forced. Absolutely, yeah, we certainly don't expect it from anyone within Aucademy. Ben is an incredibly competent, attentive, hardworking and witty sentient potato with impeccable dance moves. And what else have we got here? We've got Charlotte just explaining, me and my mum do each other's phone calls, which takes out a lot of anxiety. So I know, so Libby, do you use the phone ever, or is it avoid it as much as possible?
I do avoid it now that I think about it. I don't use it very often. So.
You don't, yeah. And I know this is a big issue for you, isn't it, Ben, using the phone? Would that work? So Charlotte's saying that they do it for each other, so it's takes the anxiety because the phone call's not about them, it's about somebody else. I don't know if that would work with you though, Ben. It might be just far too much to use the phone. Phones are awful.
No, it's more about not necessarily the context of the conversation, it's just the hassle of them saying, oh, can you speak up, can you repeat what you just said, and then just trying to communicate across the phone, which isn't the best way to hear me, I think, because I'm quite quiet anyway, and I don't always know what I'm going to say because it's always unpredictable. I used to be alright at taking phone calls, and then I think when lockdown hit and I was just wiped out, like energy-wise, it became too much, and then I just avoid phone calls like the plague. I don't touch the phone anymore.
Who tends to do the phone calls for you if you need to call like your GP or?
Well, I don't actually have many phone calls, but if like for the GP, only recently. But my mum's been doing that for me because the access to like things such as healthcare is so inaccessible. Because even though you got the app, like the NHS app or GP services app, they require you to have a phone call appointment rather than. So even face to face would be easier for me because I can try and get some words out, but over the phone it's just impossible. So it's either not have any access to healthcare via that way, or somehow hope my mum will do a phone call for me, even if she's at work or something.
People don't realise the energy and anxiety involved in that phone call, because it's not just at the phone call. It's if I've got an appointment a week in advance, then I'm going to be anxious for that whole week up until that phone call. I'm going to be
And we
thinking and
do
not sleeping about that.
Yeah, I was going to say we do swaps, don't we? So Sai helps me with lots of things, particularly with Aucademy, and so I help Sai when Sai has to have conversations with like PIP, so it's personal independent payment, kind of like our benefits system in the UK for disabled people, if you're not from the UK, and Sai really quite rightly struggles because the universal credit as well, isn't it? So, and universal credit is for sort of job seekers allowance, what used to be called job seekers allowance, and so I really struggles because the operators of those, they are always asking and doing the small talk, and I can see you just getting very, very stressed and just confused, like, why are you asking me these questions? I remember originally the universal credit people were asking you, and because all they know is that Sai is a disabled autistic man, but they sound quite infantilizing sometimes when I've heard you trying to have those conversations with them. And one of the first calls, they were like, so Sai, what are you doing for Christmas? And it just sounded really infantilizing, and also, why are you asking?
It's just pointless. It's a waste of my time, their time, and energy. Just get to the point and fuck off.
Because, like you say, sometimes you can be very talkative, but it really depends, doesn't it? It depends on the subject.
Yeah.
Because I wonder, Ben, are you at any point going to do a especially interesting podcast with Tigger and David on Marvel?
Yeah, I hope to.
Yeah, and Libby, you've got so many fantastic dedicated interests that if you're ever wanting to do a podcast, that be great to hear from you. And so Louise Clark says, watching this, I've realised I've been like this all my life. I'm 54 and never understood why I just couldn't speak up at times. Oh, well, you're very welcome here. And however you communicate, even if you're just hovering, if you're hovering in the chat box and never actually put anything in the chat box.
It's usually put down as being shy as well, which I used to think I was shy, which confused me because I would be quite what's the word? Extroverted as well. So I didn't understand how I could be quiet and shy, yet I'd do naughty things and get attention and things like that.
Because then I think to myself, like, Ben's not shy. Ben gets anxious, but you're not shy because your sense of humour, like I say, and Ben and Sai's sense of humour is just like they're trying to outdo each other in terms of ridiculousness, and just there's lots of eye rolls from me anyway.
You should see Ben's search history. There's no way he's shy.
Ben's like, no, don't let everyone know. We are joking, by the way, just so everyone knows. So I was like, are we?
I mean, what is a £2 black rib nobbler?
Sorry. And autistic led, which I think this is Callum Bratso. So for me, it's just empowering all forms of connection, whether it's through a chat box or however suits best. Yeah, fantastic, lovely. And somebody just mentioned, I think, about lockdown. Was that Libby? Was that you? Did you say that, or Ben, that there was differences during lockdown? So Andrew here is saying, out of curiosity, did either of the interviewees become mute during the lockdown during a one-to-one session, for instance? And I think there was a follow-up from them at some point, because let's find it. Can we see the follow-up, Sai?
Good.
I've lost it.
Right.
Basically, I think what Andrew was asking is that they found that with somebody they were working with. Oh, here we go. That they had a student go mute suddenly during the lockdown. I mean, I don't know whether the lockdown itself would have had that impact. affect, I don't know, what has lockdown meant for both of you in terms of being situationally mute? Has that affected how you communicate or when you communicate?
I'd say
Ben
yeah.
was nodding.
I think it's because you don't see many people. You're just in your house by yourself or with a few people, family. And so I think years and years of masking and trying to find ways to communicate or practicing your speech, even if you don't want to speak, it all kind of just went away. Like all those years, it's like what Edith says about the guide dogs. After so many time or like without training, they all forget it. I felt that's kind of similar to my speech, my communication, and with the lockdown, it kind of just all that practice of trying to speak out loud is just like went away, and I just became more and more mute, I think.
And for you, is that positive? Is that negative? Is that a bit of both?
Negative in the sense that if I do need to speak again, or I will struggle a lot more, and I'm a lot worse at, like I said, my phone calls have gone from okay to completely avoiding, and in that sense, obviously, it's going to be negative because other people will expect me to speak, and now I just can't. But then positive in the sense that I know there's the live chat or the chat box option, and that having that option and knowing that's there now, like relieves that stress. I think makes it more comfortable for me to communicate.
And what about you, Libby? Has lockdown had an impact on your mutism?
Yeah, I would say it was quite similar in that, because you do it less. I always have this thing with seminars that if I don't make myself speak once, then I'll just lose it, like being able to do it in that seminar. So I definitely, after being in lockdown where there's not that pressure, you're not going out all the time seeing people, most socializing was online, so there's always a chat box. Going after, lockdown all over and going back out, it definitely was a lot harder. Many things were, but it's definitely one. In a way, it was kind of freeing at the time. But then, now that it's all over, it's a bit more difficult again.
I think that's interesting because both of you, although not both use exactly the same language, so Libby, you said it was also freeing. And I wonder, Ben, the way you were describing, it just became natural that people would pay attention to the chat box for you and things. Did you feel that sense of being freer?
I'd say so. I'd say yeah, but I think that's also down to who I'm surrounded by. I think because obviously in lockdown, I've been more and more involved with like the autistic community, who are a lot more accepting and a lot more understanding about being mute or using the chat box. But if I was surrounded by neurotypical still, I would not have that freedom. It would just be like a decline. I wouldn't have any option, and if I did, it'd just be the judgment. So I think it all depends on literally like situational mutism is the situation and who you're around and where you are.
Because that is interesting, because the other day it was me and Libby and Si were talking to somebody in the NHS for a completely different reason, but we got to talking about all sorts of things. Well, I did because I was talking a lot. And it came up that this NHS person, because they've known me since 2018 through a number of things that I've done within the NHS with them and other people in terms of training and what have you. And they said it must be such a shock because me personally, I know I live in a lovely autistic bubble. My 3 friends like autistic. I always joke about I only have 3 friends, but my autistic group of friends, I do all autistic things. Everything I do is autistic friendly as much as possible. And then when I go into, and when I say into, I usually at the moment still mean on Zoom, a neurotypical, predominantly neurotypical space, it is a shock because I'm so used to people paying attention to the chat box. For me as well. So like I say, sometimes I don't use mouth words, but not for the same reason. So it's not for that social anxiety. It's usually just because I'm really exhausted, or I just don't have the energy to give them my voice, and things like that. So I'm just so used to, people reading the chat box, people not talking in a particular way, or it is such a shock. I don't know where I was going with that. What was the point? I guess coming back to what Ben just said as well, that, and Libby as well, actually, that you're in a nice autistic bubble, relatively speaking. I know, Libby, you're still having to do like seminars and go to lectures and things like that. But our bubble is, Aucademy socials. It's us as a little group chatting and Zooming and whatever it might be. It's just how do we get that elsewhere? We're trying, we're always trying to train, and that's what we were doing with making that Toomly as well. So just hoping that will get further, get out there. We've got some other comments as well. Hold on. We've got Victoria saying too much processing and can't take in the information. I think this is about phone calls. Have to rely on support to make phone calls. If support not there, can't access things. And we also know this firsthand with Victoria as well, because, like I say, Victoria is one of our Aucademy people, one of our friends, and really, like many of us, struggles to process and communicate via the phone.
And she absolutely loves mayonnaise. It's amazing.
And Libby, one of Libby's, one of your things, one of your weaknesses is gravy, mayonnaise and beans, because you will scream running from them, which is what was on the Toomly. And then we've got Janine, I think that's right, I'm saying that right, says, my daughter had been situationally mute for as long as she can remember. Teachers put it down to shyness and never picked it up. It had been so debilitating, and she was even bullied over it at school. She said she referred to it as her quietness, and she's had no help with it. There is nothing in the NHS. She is almost 20. And I guess, Janine, because I'm going to ask Ben and Libby about this as well in a second, but I don't know what exactly you would want from the NHS, because both of you, Ben and Libby, would you want something? What if you did want something for mutism? What would that be? And you might not want anything other than people to give you a comfortable, safe way of communicating that's not with mouth words. So I guess there's 2 parts to that. Would you both want some support in terms of being able to use mouth words? And what might that look like? You might not know the answer to that, by the way, but what might that look like? I don't know why Ben's laughing. What would you want something, Ben, to help with the mutism, and what might that look like?
I don't think I do. I don't think I'd want speech therapy or some sort of magic drug that makes me speak. Nothing. I don't think I want anything for it. What I would want is other people to change, not me. So people made the adjustments to help me and give me my communication needs that chance of getting my voice out, rather than trying to fit in with everyone else's mode of communication. That's what I'd prefer.
I really love that answer. I'm so pleased that's your answer, and I don't want Libby to feel like your answer needs to be the same. The reason I'm pleased with that is because I know us as a group wouldn't want either of you to change. We don't feel that you need. I've never thought about the fact that you should use mouth words. I do think about all the time, I say all the time, that would be, that's not literal. I think about often how much more work I want to do to get other places that aren't our autistic bubble, so that you both can get jobs that you want. I mean, ideally you'll get jobs with us when we've become Aucademy, whatever it is we end up becoming.
Also, it's easier with us because you just have to read the chat box. One person can just read a chat box, where you don't have the issue of, oh, that person's got their hand raised, oh, he's speaking over me, oh, they're just going to keep chatting. When you can just have one person read everything in the chat box, everyone's voices are heard, no problems.
Interesting, yes. Maybe be a bit more equity. So Libby, please don't feel pressured that you have to have a similar answer, because I want it to, what would you want for yourself?
I guess, I think I have to word it. For me, the issue isn't not using mouth words, it's the anxiety. So obviously anxiety is not pleasant to experience. You know, it would be nice to socially interact with people without it being so, make me so anxious and worry about so many things. But the thing is that the way to do that is usually to lower the pressure on certain types of communication. So again, I wouldn't want anything to try and like change the actual speech or anything. I mean, I can understand, like, from potentially the daughter's perspective, anxiety is not fun, especially when you're trying to make friends and things. But it is more the environment that I would say needs looking at, rather than to help with like the anxiety, rather than trying to do something with your mouth. That makes sense.
Yes, okay. Okay, that's good. That's practical, right? So for people who want to help their young person, for instance, it might be more about focusing on how do we, I mean, you said it in the Toomey, how do we reduce the anxiety in the environment? How do we reduce the anxiety in those social interactions, but not focusing on the emphasis being on using mouth words? So focusing on how do we help with that feeling of anxiety? Okay, that's good. That's practical. I think people can run with that. So maybe, yeah, not necessarily have to be from speech therapists. It's how do we reduce that anxiety, make people feel comfortable? Because I remember, Libby, that you would explain and describe that you would actually get and experience situational mutism in the autistic when we used to do the face-to-face groups, because you liked the group and you were really wanting to, well, how would you describe it? What was the anxiety in that space that meant you were situationally mute in those instances?
I think it links to kind of what we talked about earlier. I think it has a big link to rejection sensitivity. So it takes me a long time, I guess, to trust that if I make a mistake, that to trust other people that if I make a mistake or something, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's just going to be, oh, okay, and then, you know, acknowledge it and, you know, move on depending on what it is. So the more I like people, it can become more difficult for me. If someone shows me that they're not a very nice person, I can actually find it easier to speak to them, because that anxiety kind of goes away. So I think it's because that link is kind of why those social spaces I do find difficult sometimes.
And no pressure. How do you both feel in our spaces? So obviously, again, there's never any expectation for anyone to communicate in a particular way. So in our little group or in our socials, how do you feel in those spaces? Ben?
So more comfortable than any other space I've been in. Mainly because there is people, it takes you being, I think, autistic or neurodivergent to understand the communication differences. And I've never had that option before of using a chat box without judgment. And now it's just seamless. There's no like stigma or anything. You can just, anyone can do it, and there's no pressure to talk or no pressure to use mouth words. And I don't think you'd get that in a neurotypical setting at all. I think that's what makes it more comfortable in like Aucademy or autistic socials.
I didn't pay you to say that. And Libby, what about you? What do you feel in?
I do feel a lot more comfortable going to that. So if it was like a neurotypical space, I don't think I would have ever been able to like go to one. But it does take me a long time to trust a space. So I go every week to a lot of them. And like only this year really, like UOKA, do I think I'm reaching that kind of level of kind of being relaxed in the group, in that space. I don't really know what causes that to eventually happen, but it just seems to take time. So, and kind of like regular contact kind of thing.
And like you say, just knowing that you're not, none of us are gonna. Well, we just all have a laugh, don't we? There's none of that.
That's something I feel pressured from in other spaces as well, the difference in communication and humour styles. I've been in and am in spaces where majority is neurotypical, and I'll post GIFs and pictures and things and get no reactions. Yet I'll post them in autistic spaces and it gets a reaction because it's understood.
We do that a lot, don't we, as a friendship group? And also, I think not all, but lots of us as autistic people do like to communicate via emojis and GIFs and things like that. I know Jessica is there's GIFs and emojis that Jessica uses that are just so Jessica, and you just have this feel that you're communicating with Jessica, right? And things like that. Which I think is quite an interesting thing, how we communicate those ways. So I had a couple more questions, and then I want to think about dinner. And there's loads of comments that I haven't even seen now, so I'm hoping you're paying attention to some of them, because there's like not 29 that I haven't been able to look at.
I starred some.
Yeah, I've seen some that are starred that we can have a look at as well. So so that you've kind of covered friendships to some extent, in the sense of you've talked about your friendship group with us as an autistic group. So is there difference for you? Do you have neurotypical friends? You have other friends? Do you have neurotypical friends? And is that different? Is your communication different with those people? So that's the one question, is do you have neurotypical friends? So Libby, do you think you have neurotypical friends?
Definitely holistic. Not entirely sure neurotypical.
Okay. Ben? Do you think you have?
Holistic is not autistic, but not neurotypical, by the way. People don't know.
Just so people know, yeah.
So they might be
Lovely.
ADHD or dyslexic.
Ben?
Yeah, I think unfortunately I have a lot of neurotypical friends.
Yeah.
It says unfortunately. There's so many comments. I'm just gonna have to stay away from the comment section. I'm just gonna let Si tell me if there's good ones and put them in the starred bit. Are they different? Are you more comfortable, less comfortable? Are you more likely to experience that sort of situational anxiety with the neurotypical group than, I say group? Are our friends really neurotypical is the eternal question. So what do you think, Ben? It sounds like you're more likely to have neurotypical friends. Libby's not too sure if they're neurotypical necessarily. So what's your anxiety maybe like with those people?
Well, the neurotypical friends I do have is friends from school, and I've known them for like 10 years, I think. And I'd say there's been a few fallouts with me being excluded from the group or leaving the group for a little while. And that's because of me having difference in communication, not necessarily mutism, maybe because of rejection sensitivity or because of certain reactions to things. But I'd say when I'm talking to them, which is mainly gaming online, I'm using mouth words pretty much like 99% of the time. And I'd say most of that is because I partially want to, but I feel that pressure to speak as well. And I'd say one of the friends, I think they could be neurodivergent. They give me that vibe. And I'd say around him, I don't have to speak, and I don't think he cares that whether I do or not. He won't judge. I think that's kind of nice. But yeah, I can definitely tell with the neurotypicals. If you don't speak, they'll be like, "Is your mic not working?" Or does he just not want to speak to us, or something like that. They will have that initial reaction rather than just, okay, Ben just doesn't want to talk today or can't talk today.
Do you think you're friends with them because you actually get on and you connect, or is it just because you were at school together?
I think we have quite a lot of like good and shared memories, and I do like them on occasion. They do piss me off sometimes, and there's questionable friendships, but I think it's that stability as well, partially that I stay with them because I've known them for so long, like you say. But I don't know.
I just want to ask because it was sort of part of, I'm afraid I forgot their name, but who was talking about their daughter. Did either of you, or do you feel that you've ever experienced being bullied because of not being able to use mouth words? Or was it just you were seen as the quiet one and people left you alone at school, for instance?
I'm never sure on the definition of bullying, so I never know how to answer that one.
I guess people making you feel uncomfortable or distressed by either saying things or doing things and behaviours because of not speaking. Does that make sense? So do you think that's ever been an issue?
I did experience that in secondary school. It wasn't like it wasn't, because I always think bullying like it's people like seeking you out. It was more just, you get put into groups and things. So if you ended up with certain people, then that would kind of thing. So.
And Ben, do you feel that, were you ever bullied for not speaking?
Not for situational mutism or not speaking. For other things, yes, but from when I'm trying to think back to school, I'd say I did a lot of, like, I heavily masked to the point where you would think I was neurotypical, but I tried to be neurotypical. I had no idea about autism or what it's like to be autistic. So I'd say, I don't, apart from maybe the occasional, can you repeat that or speak up a little bit, I'd say the teachers were more harsher to me than the students, because they're the ones that are expecting or putting pressure on communications, whereas the people who are actually at the same age, they don't really care, I don't think, for me anyway.
That's interesting. So yes, any teachers, people aren't naturally mean. Okay, I don't think people are just born mean, and so I don't think people are typically trying to be hurtful. But I think it's very important. So if there's any teachers watching or teaching assistants or anybody like that, to hear what was just said, which is that actually Ben didn't necessarily feel bullied or whatever for being situationally mute, for not using mouth words by other pupils at school, but felt. Do you feel potentially you were bullied by teachers for not? Was it more just extreme pressure and expectation? I don't want to put words in people's mouths that.
It's a bit of both, I think. Because I was at an all-boys grammar school, so obviously you have high expectations and high standards, and you'd get those very strict teachers that would be like, that would force you to speak, and if you don't speak, they'd get cross and they'd get mad. And then you have some teachers who would not bully you into speaking, but they'd kind of, I guess, be more persuasive into speaking, if that makes sense. They'd try and gently push you into giving an answer. And obviously there's some teachers that are just really nice
Wankers.
and just, oh, yeah, there are wanker teachers, but there are nice teachers too, who are just, like, in year 13, so sixth form, I had the Senko, who I literally spent the entire year in her office. I didn't have to say a single word. And I think that's where it changed for me at school. That's the 1 year out of my entire school experience I actually felt safe and comfortable, because I didn't have that pressure to speak.
And you use the word safe. And I think that's also important for people, again, if there's teachers or Senkos or TAs watching, to hear that in your whole school experience, the year where you were in an office not being expected to speak, you felt safe. And that's a very interesting word to use.
That's because she was also the Senko. That's because she had some sort of understanding, maybe not fully, but she was just generally a nice human being anyway. But I don't think any of the teachers really had the training. They don't have any sort of expertise or even just the basic understanding of any neurodivergence or any sort of idea of what mutism is. I don't think I even witnessed any pupils, from what I can remember, who had visible mutism, from what I can recall, because I was in her office quite a lot, so I knew most of the quote-unquote special needs kids that would be in the office.
Because I remember partway through, while you were still a student, then I asked you to look over a presentation that I was going to be giving, and I was talking about participation cards. And I remember you saying that you wished those participation cards were used on your degree, because that would have been before lockdown. And so for people who don't know, the participation cards that I use are based on things that get used at autism, like festivals, or autism, like Autscape and things like that. And I adapted them to use with all students. It didn't matter whether they had an inclusive learning plan or not. And so it's please include me today, just listening, table discussion only, and alternate means of communication. And the alternate means of communication was specifically I included that one because I was thinking of you and Ben and Libby, and that's why I included that card. Nobody ever picked it. I had like 80 students. Nobody ever picked it. But the point was, there might be at some point in my academic career a student who does need that alternate means of communication card. And I don't want to make it harder for that person to convey that. I want them to be able to pick up a card and I can see that card and go, right, and let's work out what does that person want. So trying to push for that everywhere. All schools should be doing it. Universities should be doing it. It should be everywhere, because do you remember that conversation, Ben?
I remember seeing them for the first time and being like, all those years of me wanting maybe to say something, but then not wanting to initiate. I wanted the teacher to be like, oh, he wants to say something. Why don't I approach him first, maybe quietly, see if he wants to participate, and then have that option rather than just put your hand up and speak or don't speak at all.
And I, in different settings, when I've been called in to do training for different places, and I've brought that card, and I remember actually there was it was a secondary school, and there was a pupil in that class, and the teacher said to me, "Oh, they don't speak. He won't contribute," kind of thing. And I was but I still gave him the option, because I was thinking, I wonder if nobody ever gives him the option. So I said, you're welcome if you want to write down any points. I don't even have to look at them if he doesn't want me to, but just wanted him to know that he was included in his way. So you both have influenced me and how I think about my own teaching and how I approach other people. So actually both of you have taught me, because you both might potentially, I think Ben was the first situationally mute person that I was aware of in, our groups and things like that, and actually in my adult life. And so both of you have really influenced how I think about how do we support people to be able to communicate in a way that suits them. I don't know if you probably don't know that. It's probably the first time I've ever said anything like that. Any thoughts about that? Did you have any idea that you're the reason that my participation cards kind of really exist? Because I think about you in my class, if you were in my class.
I'm naturally a trendsetter, so.
This is true. And I just want to flag here, because it's been up on the screen for a while. So Tess said, it would be nice if people don't assume I'm stupid just because I can't always talk, or shame me when I do talk, accusing me of faking. And that's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? Because, like I said, we would have been absolutely happy for Sinai, for instance, to have the chat box used today, and that we would bring your voices in from the chat box. So there was no expectation for either of you to use mouth words at all. So I wonder, is that ever a thing? Does anyone ever think that you must be faking it because you can talk? Ben's nodding. That is a thing. Have people thought this or said this?
You can't
Libby's
be mute
nodding
if you speak. That's the general idea. Like, if you can speak whatever, then you can't be mute. That's what I'm basically told and seen as.
Not understanding that it's situational. Libby, you were nodding as well. Have people made you feel or said things like that?
Yeah, again, mainly say professionals, like teachers, kind of people, those kind of people. But then also people think it's about them when it happens, and that is always awkward when they do that. Family members, think they've done something, and then they try to get you to speak like you did last time, and then that just makes you shut down even more, and then it's not great.
Yeah, see that, and again, that's interesting, because I think, like I say, we've known Ben for several years, and probably can count on my hands how many times I've heard your voice, because we chat via the chat box. Libby, you change at different points in our spaces, and I never think to myself, oh, have we made Libby feel bad, and have we made Libby feel that they can't, that they're, or made them anxious or whatever, because I hope that our little group is enough that you would say that something's made you anxious. I never think to myself, oh, Libby's using mouth words today, or oh, Libby's not using mouth words today, because you do change, right? So I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why people do that. I have no answer for that.
I remember as a kid, me and my mum would often visit my nana and granddad, but I found my nana and granddad quite intimidating. Even though I loved going there because I really liked my granddad, but I still found him imposing in a way. I don't know what it was. I wasn't scared of him, but there was something imposing about him. And my nana, she was scary. So whenever I wanted a biscuit or a cup of tea or something, I would ask my mum, can you ask Nana if I can have a cup of tea, or can you ask Nana if I can have a biscuit? Why are you asking yourself? You've asked me, ask them yourself. And so I would go without, or I would get frustrated, or yeah, it was just awkward. So it was always a bittersweet thing going there because I loved seeing my Nana and Granddad, but it was always awkward knowing that there was going to be a communication issue. And I was going to feel, I don't know, a bit of a mixed bag of emotions.
Yeah, because that I think that's also quite important that people realise and recognise that, and not to do that. And when I say, what I mean is the bit where if any of us were to say to somebody, can you please ask the person for something, or can you, don't do that thing of, well, you just asked me, go and ask them yourself. It's kind of like, if you could do that easily without discomfort or anxiety or whatever it is, you would do it. You would have done it initially. So you are that safe person for that person because they are asking you. So recognize you're that safe person, and please do that. Be the voice for that person who's actually entrusting you with their words, right? This is just really sweet. So Louise says, oh, Ben and Libby, I just want to give you both a big hug, but I'm guessing you wouldn't like that. We do finger boops in our group as well. So instead of hugs, I'm a finger booper, which upsets Si because he likes hugs and I don't. So that was really lovely. So there's so much really lovely comments from people actually. So Louise, I can relate to so much of what's been said, and now my 14-year-old son is going through this. To be honest, I'm a bit teary because this is a real light bulb moment. Thank you all so much. Oh, well, yeah. And I'm so glad that we did this session because, like I say, I've learned lots from both of you about situational mutism and how to support people and just have people as friends. We'll try not to go for much longer, actually, because Si was like, I knew this wouldn't be just 45 extra minutes. So Pamela's just asking, how did you manage reading aloud in primary school reading groups? I'm assuming you didn't, or did you force yourself through it? Ben's thinking. Libby, did you have to do read aloud at school?
Yeah, I would force myself, but I would get a friend to like read it to me first, also because I can't sounds. I mispronounce a lot of words, and I used to be really self-conscious about that as well. So I used to get my friend to tell me first, and I used to like remember it, what bit I was going to have to read out loud. So.
And Ben, did you have to read?
I think it's a bit sweet though, because I like the reading. I don't mind reading out loud, especially as because I like presenting, it's just not in front of people. And when you're reading in class, you're just sitting at the desk, everyone's got their heads down. Everyone has to read, so it's not much of a big deal. But if I'm told to speak up, or if I do say something wrong, that's when I withdraw again. So I think, yeah, it's bittersweet up and down.
And this part here, which is about how do you manage speech and employment. So this is an interesting one. I don't know, Ben, if you can talk to this, because I know this has been quite a difficult couple of years since your degree finished. And I obviously would like to scoop everybody and get you jobs with Aucademy when we actually start being a proper something. I've been saying this for months, I know. I'm sorry, everybody. But you might not want that. You might want something, you know, completely different career. But I know it's been quite stressful and upsetting for the last couple of years where you've tried and I don't know. I know that at one point you weren't even going to apply for jobs because you were feeling so frustrated that you wouldn't get one because of not being able to speak, or maybe being forced to speak. Can you talk to that? So about employment.
I think because I have no clue what the change was, but back in like 2016, 17, when I could get a job at that age, I went through around, I think I had 3 interviews with different employers. One was a one-to-one, and I had the feedback of, you're too quiet and too timid and too withdrawn, we need someone a bit more confident. The second interview was a group interview, and there's like like different tables of people when you was in groups, and the feedback was that you didn't speak up enough in the group. And then the third one, I got a job because my brothers went there and my mum knew the owner, and it was helpful because they understood I am quite quiet and they didn't have a problem with that. And then now after uni, I've just put off all interviews because it's partially just the worry that I'm not going to be able to do it. I don't have the skill, the ability. There's also the interview. I had actually an interview just for, I think it's just a grocery store shop I cancelled because they wanted me to come in that day, and I just had no energy to use mouth words, and I knew they wouldn't. They just wouldn't adjust because they had so many applicants, and they didn't really care about who was there or their needs. They just wanted someone. And I had actually a interview, I think it was Spectrum Gaming, and I'd say that's the only interview I felt comfortable because obviously they're autistic too, and they completely respected the use of the chat box. And I felt, though I don't get it, and I don't mind, that felt safe. They had accessibility, and no other job I feel has done that. And I guess that's because they're autistic, and neurotypicals won't have that adjustment, and I don't think they will have that adjustment for quite a while. So it's put me off applying for anything.
So you're just waiting for us to...
I'm waiting for Scoop.
To get scooped.
Scoop.
Like I said last night on chatting with the London Autism Group charity, that we were talking about the ridiculous money that certain large autistic, or no, they're not autistic charities, certain large autism charities get, and it's ridiculous. It's millions and millions. And they were saying about, I think it was last year, it was income that they made in terms of like getting money from donations and all sorts was like £96 million. They spent 95 million of that. We're like, where has that money gone? Because the autistic community isn't seeing it, which means they had 1 million left over. And I'm like, if you just gave us that million, like, think what we've been able to do as Aucademy with no money, the fantastic donations that we get from people on like Patreon and that pay for our guests, but it doesn't pay for running it. I don't pay myself. Sai doesn't get paid. Our modmins don't get paid. Our social group facilitators don't get paid. Just think what we can do with £1 million, given what we can do with no money, right? So Sai's just put on the screen for people who can't see it. If anyone is looking to employ Ben, his biggest attribute is an underwear model, or is as an underwear model. And that really frustrates me and makes me really disappointed. Again, it's that whole thing of if people don't give people like yourselves alternate means of communication, they are missing out on so much, and that upsets me, and I imagine frustrates, distresses you.
When you look at jobs as well, when they had all the list of what they're looking for, and they have like organizational skills, promptness, and then literally every job advert has clear communication skills, or must be like able to communicate, and that's where it falls down on most of the like accessibility.
But that's frustrating because you have got clear communication skills. They're just not with mouth words.
Be confident and outgoing.
Yeah.
You've basically just got to bullshit on your interview.
What about you, Libby? I don't know if you've done any employment while you've been studying and things.
No. I find that whole area also very difficult. I did try during the gap year, because I did actually have one, but I wasn't even able to ask for like just like volunteer work. I wasn't even able to ask them.
But again, your plan is to stay with Aucademy so that we can do all the wonderful things. Okay, right. I'm going to do a couple more and then we'll wrap up. But I've really enjoyed this. I'm kind of forgetting that we're also live to some extent because we're so used to just chatting with each other anyway, aren't we? Where are we? Oh, so Jenny here saying that this was a little while back, but same for me, and now my son has to ask me to talk to other people for him too. It's confusing for strangers as he's taller than me and looks older than 12. And that's okay. It's not okay that people aren't going to understand it, but I guess to some extent, dependent on how confident you feel as well, Jenny, to be able to just, I guess, just do that for your son. That's a good point, actually. I mean, so for instance, Ben, when your mum does need to speak for you, how does that go? Does anyone question that? Does anyone say anything about that?
I mean, I don't really go out much anyway for her to need to, but if I do, I mean, it's kind of instinct now, and you don't really question it. Because people are just too involved in their own business, I guess, to really notice it at the moment with everything going on in the world. But I'd say definitely a few years ago, if my mum was to do that, there'd be more like looks and stares like, why is this kid not talking? Is there something wrong? But now I guess it just doesn't bother me too much now. It's just natural.
And what about you, Libby? Does anybody speak for you on occasion?
My mum does.
Yeah. Does anyone question that or make any comment or make you feel uncomfortable?
Family members do if we're out together. I know my mum feels pressure that they think she's letting me get away with things or something. So that kind of aspect sometimes.
How are you going to manage in the real world?
Yeah, stuff like that.
We need to change the real world. That's the point. We need to, it needs to change. And hello, Isla or Ayla, thank you for your comments. So they're 49 and have had situational mutism throughout their life. I have been able to cope at work as I've gotten older. Hello, fellow situational mutism, situational mute person. I just want to actually very, very quickly. So this person said that, hello, Inga. We see Inga, I think, sometimes on the comment section, which is lovely. So they said they joined late. This was quite a while back, so I don't know if they're still here. And they were just saying, sorry if this was covered in the video. They were wondering what the difference is between situational mutism and shutdown. And I think actually, although we probably covered it to some extent, we didn't explain exactly those two things in terms of the differences. Anyone want to take a stab at what the differences might be? Do you experience both? So like Libby and Ben, do you experience both? Can either of you say what's the difference? Libby?
I think there's different, what's behind it is different, like what makes it happen is different. And shutdown, even though I definitely, you can, because I also can become mute from like environment as well. I think that's more involved with shutdown. I think that's more of a full body kind of thing, like mentally and everything. Whereas situational mutism, I mean, I haven't shut down in the same way because it's more an anxiety-based thing rather than overwhelmed too much kind of thing. I think that's my interpretation.
Perfect, yeah. And Ben, any thoughts on, do you experience both and how you tell the difference?
I think it's similar to what Libby said. If I'd say shutdown's more everything, like if I'm just overwhelmed, got no energy, I'll just completely shut down and just withdraw myself. But situational mutism is primarily focused on the communication rather than how I feel, like my body wise or my head. Is more just, yeah, it's definitely more communication rather than whereas shutdown's more like just everything. I think you can experience shutdown and situational mutism, but not necessarily situation. I fucked up in my head. Yes, I'll just answer yes.
Fantastic. Hopefully that helps the people, the difference. So potentially one, situational mutism, more anxiety driven. Shutdown is overwhelmed. Sensory, social, emotional, overwhelm, and you just shut down. Because I experienced shutdown. And I, like I say, in shutdown and extreme burnout, I do reduce or lose the ability to speak, but it is not anxiety based. It is, I am just absolutely exhausted everywhere, brain, emotions, body, and things. So it is different from what I understand from situational mutism. Okay, let's end with my favourite question. What is or are, Ben, are you going to be a potato? What is or are your favourite stims? So I'm feeling like Ben is disappearing to become a potato. You might actually have to close and come back in again, Ben, if you are, because I know the camera works.
Putting on that mankini I sent him.
So Libby, what have you got a favourite stim at the moment, or one you're doing quite often?
I rock quite often. Like move. I'm always kind of moving my body. So I guess that's kind of a favourite one.
And I do wonder, again, because you like I say, the pressure and things like that, it might be for you proprioception. So knowing and the feel of your body in space and things.
Yeah, I don't know my body very well, like the inside stuff. No.
Oh, Ben's sad because it doesn't work. So he was going to be a potato. That should have worked though. Are you using, did you come in here as snap camera or did you come in as your normal camera? So you should be able to change it on the snap camera then. You just change the options. Anyway, yeah, so I think because we didn't get a chance, there was too many things we could cover, but with Libby, with your particular kind of pie that, or cake or whatever it is that makes you, autistic, potentially attention differences?
Yeah, I'm diagnosed attention, ADHD,
Okay.
attention differences.
ADHD. We know that you struggle with alexithymia, so recognising and understanding your feelings. You have them, you're just not sure, and processing them can be a bit difficult. So potentially then proprioception, so knowing where your body is in space, and the interoception, so you struggle maybe with feelings on the inside of your body as well.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody said this was a refreshing conversation. They're glad they happened by it. Oh, we're glad you're here. And what about you, Ben? So well, this is interesting because this week you said this is the first time that you've actually bought some Stim objects. How long have you known us? And you were like, I'm going to buy some Stim objects. So yeah, have you got a favourite Stim?
Again, don't look at Ben's search history for adult Stim toys.
Well, body parts don't count as Stims apparently, but
Yes, they do.
like this.
Absolutely.
Well, not certain body parts. I think this is my favourite at the moment. It's just a spinny gyroscope thingy. I can't really do it on my hand.
Yeah, it doesn't really work on your hand because Oh, if you do it on the ends of your fingers, it does though, Ben. Have a go.
Put it on a book.
Yeah, you'd have to put it on something. Oh, yes, it's so stimmy. It's much, Ben, isn't it much bigger than you thought it was going to be?
I think it's smaller than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like...
Ah. Okay, I thought it was going to be much smaller. Okay. So you like that one? Didn't you get a little gaming one as well?
Clicker thing. Because I like the clicking of the remote. I also like this, don't know where it is. This moon thing I got for Christmas. I think it's out of battery, but you change its colour.
I'm wanting to get one of
It's
those.
just very nice to click.
Actually, saying that, I remember in our Stim suitcase, you used to it's like a silicon light up, and when was it a rabbit?
I think so. It was
Was
very
it for the light,
soft.
or-
Yeah, the touch light.
It was the silicon, wasn't it? Yeah. Because I used to just hand it to you because I knew you liked it and you wouldn't ask or say anything. So I just oh, Ben, here, have the rabbit. So I didn't know if it was lights as well because when you touch it, it changes colour as well, which was lovely. Janine's just saying, I love the closed captioning misinterpretations. Steam objects instead of Stim objects. Nice. Bobby, where do you get one of those? Yeah, I can't remember what it was called on Amazon, but I did get it on Amazon. So it's on the, actually, that's quite useful. Si, have you got the Stim list? So there's an Amazon wish list that we've got, not wanting people to buy us things. It's just so that you can see what sorts of things we have bought that you might like. So I can't remember what this was called.
Mine's called a kinetic desk toy metal spinner gyroscope.
Libby's brought one of their cats. Libby has so many gorgeous cats. This is not the one with the moustache, though. This is the one with big mush. Oh, so cute. We've forgotten that everybody else is in the chat box. So I'm just it's just us now, just like we would normally be chatting. Oh, yes. So Victoria's saying it's called a kinetic desk. Oh, no, wrong one. Sorry. Kinetic desk toy. What's your favourite STEM, as in science? And they put me, meteorology. Fantastic. Si, what is your favourite STEM at the moment? Because you bought lots of interesting things recently as well.
Yeah, I'm liking these metal spinners that you can change. You can take the things off.
You've mixed and matched, haven't you? So because you bought,
Clock camera.
You've
Yeah.
bought one like this one, and you've mixed and matched the different parts, though, haven't you? Because there's ones with
Yeah, one
it
had
looks like
spherical shapes on them, and the other had like bullet shapes on them, but I mixed them around.
yeah.
But
So
I like
this-
to
yeah.
have them both going at the same time. Very satisfying. This fucking camera is pissing me off. Focus.
Well, this is a
I've got an ADHD
yeah.
camera, it just won't focus.
And yeah, the oh yeah, oh, we've all got octopose. There's my octopose.
Where is mine? I've lost mine.
That doesn't surprise me, Si. And then I've got my giant one. Oh, thank you.
I found my gloves. I've been
Kelly.
looking for these all week.
I've still got your ear defenders,
Yes, I know.
although they don't go inside out though. But look at it. It's like a cupcake. It's huge. Oh, and this is Octavia, which is size octopus. We do like our octopus.
Also, I like playing with my balls.
I like playing with them too.
I'm sorry people were still here. It's almost like it's just a normal chat like we would normally have. But these are great, and I have deflated one. They're very satisfying. I know Victoria loves these. Oh yes,
I'm
Bobby's
really,
just
really
said.
happy I found my gloves.
But yes, the plural, when you have more than one octopus, the plural is octopode, not octopi, because
It's
of
Greek,
the
not Latin.
yes, it's Greek, the etymology. We're going to just be here forever. So thank you everyone so much for being here. Next week we have Amy Pearson, so Dr. Amy Pearson, recently discovered autistic person, and they are discussing their research on autistic victimization. So they did a study about us more likely to be victimized. So obviously it's going to be quite a serious topic, but Amy is really great at discussing this really very important topic. Oh, so somebody's just asking, where is the Amazon list? Did you find it, Si?
No.
Hold on. Let's see if I can find it quickly before we disappear. Hold on.
I looked in one note, but
Yeah, it's under the Aucademy resources list on our website, but let's have a look. Which list? Here it is. Link address. There we go. I'll flag it on the screen as well because it's quite a short one for people. So yeah, it's there you go, you found your octopus. So yeah, we do have that wish list. We try to update it because sometimes the things that you add to the Amazon wish list disappear because they stop selling it and what have you. But it does have a number of the things that we've bought recently that we've really, really enjoyed, including loops and flares and noise cancelling earbuds. I'm really, really surprised how many autistic people don't know about loops and flares because they're actually really, really helpful. Anyway, thank you everyone so much. I'm going to go away and have my dinner now. And like I say, yeah, next week we're doing autistic victimization. Okay. The final question, unless I decided to change it, Team Cap or Team Iron Man, and why Lego Batman? Libby, do you do Marvel? I don't know if you do. Okay. So Team Cap or Team Iron Man? I mean, I just really like Iron Man as a character. Is that the wrong answer, Ben?
I'd say just have them mingle and have the best of both worlds.
Captain Iron Man.
Mm.
There was a homogenous character that incorporated a lot of other characters.
Will it be Team Cap or Team Iron Man?
I like both.
I don't know. Team Cap is too squeaky clean for me. Like Captain America is just too squeaky clean.
Yeah, I'm Team Cap all the way.
Really?
Yeah, I know, it's a bit weird for me.
You're not
It
that
is.
clean.
Say it again, sorry. Ben, sorry.
Si's not that clean though.
Oh, Iron Man. I relate to the trauma, I think. Yeah, I just like
Captain
Iron Man.
America's got trauma.
Yeah, but he's still so squeaky clean. I just like Iron Man.
That's what I love about
for his,
Marvel, because they're
honesty and whatnot.
very relatable and the writing is good. A lot of the characters are traumatized heavily. The shit they've been through, and they have to still do.
I feel called out. Where has it gone? Hold on. Do autistic people struggle to close off conversations? Yes. We have inertia. I mean, to be fair, it's because we're so used to being in Zoom chats with each other for hours, nearly every day. But actually, most of our Aucademy lives do end up being at least 2 hours long because autistic people are just far too interesting, and then we get stuck chatting to each other. But I'm going to do the outro music. So thank you everyone for being here. Speak soon.
Sausages.
Sausages. Favourite Stimmy word.
Can't find it now, can you? Go on, where's the
I know,
button?
I
Go on,
can't.
press it.
I
Where
always,
is it?
I always do.
No pressure. You found it yet? What about now?